So I've peeled this potato and I'm going to cut it in small cubes because even though it'll cook down somewhat, it's going to have to be small pieces to fit into the curry puff. So now I've got a bunch of cubes. So I'm just getting all the potatoes I need ready. Joe, can you get me one of those big bowls and put some water in it? And we'll put all these into the water.
Now, if they have different faucets, they can, as long as they use cold water, it's okay?
Yeah, you can even use warm water.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but we're not trying to cook them. We're just trying to get this off. And here's another thing about doing this. If you've ever tried to make hash browns and they turn out all gummy in the pan, it's because you haven't rinsed it in water first. You have to rinse off the outer layer of starch that collects when you cut into the potato. And so if you're going to make hash browns, you rinse them in water, and then you drain them, and then when you fry them, they won't be all gummy and sticky. One recipe takes 3 big potatoes, 3 big chicken breasts, and 1 medium onion. So all I have is big onions. I'm going to do 1.5 big onions. Okay. And I like to get rid of this stuff. You know, it still holds together if you don't cut too much off. So I'm just going to show you how I chop them up. You want to be sure that you get all that brown off. And if there's any question, take another layer because it's no fun to chew onion that is dried and tough, but skin. So this way you can get a nice fine chop. There's that piece. Okay, now this also has some tomatoes added right at the end, but because I'm chopping everything, I want to chop all the vegetables before the chicken. So I'm putting 2 of these large Roma tomatoes per recipe. I'm going to start cutting the chicken. Now you know this little piece here with the little veins in it. Sorry, but it just does not taste good. And if you get that bite, you might not like it. So I always try to get rid of that. Cut off that stuff. Just have the little pieces. Now once again, I'm going to cut this in small pieces like I did the potato. Okay, it might have some veins in it. It might have some, what's it called?
Cartilage.
Cartilage. If it has cartilage, get rid of the cartilage. Okay? But see this nice fat? Wow, that's flavor. Okay? That is flavor. And in fact, often when I make curry puffs, I put a couple of thighs with the bone just so that I have the flavor from the bone and from the skin and from the fat. Now here's another tip. This is thoroughly thawed and it's a nice sharp knife. And see, look, that's a little wider. I'm going to cut that narrower so I can get some smaller cubes. But meat is always easier to cut if it's slightly frozen. Not hard, you know, you have to be able to cut it easily enough, but it doesn't slip around and move away from your knife when it's still partially frozen. See, with this, I've got to really hold on to it, and I'm going to keep my fingers tucked in and my knuckles pointed out. So I'm not going to cut my fingers. Ah! No. So I'm having little cubes here, basically. Of course, they're going to shrink down. The curry puffs are pretty small, so I want small pieces of chicken. Now this is one recipe. Oh, gotta get that fat. One recipe takes 3 chicken breasts. So I'm going to use, there's 6 in that package. I'll use all 6 in that package. And I think that'll do it.
Okay.
Okay, now remember we've got our potatoes soaking in water, our chicken. We've got some chopped tomatoes to use at the very end. And I've got a lot of onion and garlic and ginger here ready to go. But I just wanted to show you how I do the garlic and ginger. I really like to get it small and get the fragrance throughout. And so instead of chopping it in pieces that may end up too big, I just like to put it in a grater. And then I have all the pieces small enough. So with that done, I want to start showing you how we cook the spices and put everything in. Now you may notice that this is a different kitchen, yes, because we've now moved to Thailand. And I missed the other part of the video earlier. So here we go. Let's move over to the pot. The oil has been warming up and you can see it smoking. I think I'll turn it down a little. Let's go way down, way, way, way down. Because we don't want to burn the spices. That's a little risky. I think I'm even going to put a little more oil to cool it down. Okay, now the spices that we're going to put for one recipe would be 2 cloves, 2 cinnamon, or 1 cinnamon stick, which I've broken, 6 pieces of star anise, and I wanted to put a whole star anise here so you could see it if you're not familiar with it. But remember, I'm doing 2 recipes worth, so I'm going to go ahead and put the cinnamon in first. I only want to cook that for 1 minute. The oil's hot and I don't want the cinnamon to burn. This is the part that smells so great. Yeah, you might have to stand back. It pops sometimes. Okay, 1 minute. Now the rest of the spices, don't want to burn it, but it's just the fragrance of this fills the whole house. It's just a wonderful, wonderful fragrance. Now I have the onion ready to go. So after these have been incorporating the fragrance and the taste into the oil, now I'll put in the onions and garlic. We'll cook that 1 or 2 minutes until the onions start becoming transparent. You can probably turn up the heat a little bit now. Oh, doesn't it smell good? I could have put the light on. Does that help? Try not to break up the spices too small, because later on you're going to have to pick them out. Okay, I'm going to add the chicken. Do you remember we chopped up some of the skin also for flavor, very tiny, but I'm also putting a few big pieces of skin. I didn't want a whole bunch in there. I usually like to have a thigh or even a breast with the bone intact for the flavor of the bone. But I don't have that this time. Wouldn't you know, the store I went to here in Thailand only had boneless chicken breast. Now it doesn't have to be breasts, it can be thighs, but I wouldn't recommend legs just because there are so many ligaments and legs, and you'd have to try to get the heavy ones out so that they wouldn't cause tough spots in your curry puffs, because these are very tender little puffs. Let's see if that's up enough. As high as it goes. So you need to cook this until the chicken is pretty much cooked through, although it will cook longer because we'll have to add the potatoes and the coconut milk and the curry powder. But basically you want to get the chicken cooked through at this point. Through now, so I'm going to first add some more spices. I have salt and the curry powder. This is a different brand I'm using, so I'm not going to put it all. I usually use a Japanese curry powder made by a company called S&B. And I really like the fragrance of it and the taste of it. But like I said, I'm in Thailand. I didn't have Japanese curry powder, although it's probably here somewhere. I also like to add MSG. For those of you who don't like MSG or don't feel like it's healthy, that's certainly an optional item that you can leave out. So now I've got the curry powder. Remember that we had, let's see, sorry, I didn't have this ready, but I'll be fast. Remember that we had the potatoes soaking in water so they wouldn't turn black or red? So I need to drain that water off. Isn't that a great big strainer? So now the potatoes are here. They'll be able to absorb the flavor of the curry powder and the salt. So that's just what I want. It's going to have to keep cooking until the potatoes are soft. I don't want them to dissolve into mush, although sometimes they get that way eventually. And they still taste great. Finally, after the potatoes are cooked, I'll add some tomatoes. I've got 3 chopped tomatoes here. Just small tomatoes. And although this recipe didn't originally call for it, I love the taste of coconut milk with curry, and so I always add some of this at the end too. I don't want to add it too early or it will curdle. So that's basically it for the curry puff filling. Like I said, I will add the tomatoes at the end and I'll taste it, check it for seasoning, and of course I'll take those pieces of skin out. In the next segment of the video, you'll see how this stuffing goes into the curry puffs.